Hey guys, before we get into the podcast, I just want to give a shout out to our brand new member, Donald.
Thank you, Donald, for becoming a member. We really appreciate it. If you guys want to become a member, find out more information at humanechoes.com.
It gets you access to the bonus podcast at the lowest level and a whole ton of other stuff as you move up the tiers. Thank you again to Donald. The members are the lifeblood that keeps this podcast pumping. And without further ado, let's get into it, Tony. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and occasionally take questions from you, the oddball fans, if Tony gets the tweet out soon enough.
Sometimes those late tweets work better. They are working better today, but sometimes they do.
Yeah, I saw that go up about 10 minutes before we started recording, and I was like, Tony slept in a little bit. Forgot to schedule that one.
I usually schedule it the night before so I can sleep in. This time I was just like in a Reddit hole. I was reading about the NFL.
We are talking about a movie that I thought about. I was like, does this fit our description, Tony? Is this an oddball movie? It's certainly one that everybody's heard of. But I have come to the conclusion that yes, this is a very oddball movie. We're talking about No Country for Old Men.
I definitely think this one fits with what we've talked about, especially with our recent obsession with like Green Room and Blue Ruin and everything else.
Yeah, here's what freaks me out about this movie, Tony. I don't know what it means.
It's one of those where I've had to read lots of different papers on it, and I still don't know what it means. Like, it's one of the best critical, or one of the highest critically acclaimed movies that I've watched repeatedly. And I still try to understand all the meaning that Cormac McCarthy's thrown into it. And like Blood Meridian, I don't even know.
Here's what I've come up with, Tony. Should I get into that, or should we talk about the plot first? Because I've just dove right into meaning and stuff.
Well, right. let's give him a quick synopsis about this.
Hang out till later, and we'll find out what Albert thinks the movie means.
All right, starting out with this movie, this is set in 1980. You've got Llewellyn Moss, played by Josh Brolin, who comes across a lot of money in the desert. Looks like a fight between cartel members. It's definitely over drugs and money. And basically, he just goes and finds $2 million off of one of the guys that was killed in the incident. And the story kind of cascades from there as you've got this guy, Anton Chigurh, chasing after him.
Chigurh,
maybe for the money? Chigurh?
Chigurh, not sugar. It's spelled like Chigurh, but
I think you're just hearing me wrong because it said Chigurh.
You said sugar.
That's what they say in the movie. I said Chigurh.
No, he mishears it in the movie. He says his name's Sugar, and he's like, no, it's Chigurh. Anton Chigurh.
Al's being pedantic right now.
That's the guy's name. He's one of the three main people in the movie. You gotta get his name.
I usually call him Chigurh and then sometimes call him Chigurh.
I didn't say Llewellyn Moss because that's not his name. All right.
Pedantic Al is pedantic.
I'm also correct, and that's the most fun.
And an asshole, but that's okay.
Anyway, the thing I love about his the way he gets in trouble, he would have been fine if he didn't go back to give this guy the water, which turned out to be a meaningless gesture anyway because the guy was already dead.
Yeah, he had his head blown out the window. It was pretty nasty. There was just one part of his conscience that wouldn't let this guy who was just begging for water go. And he goes back to the crime scene. And in one of the oh shit moments of the movie, you look up and on the horizon in the very, very early part, rising light, you just see a second truck parked next to his.
And if it needed to be pointed out, we're going to point it out. The cinematography in this movie is fantastic. The Coen brothers, I don't remember which cinematographer they're working with in this, but that particular shot and just the way they paint the screen with light, you have this really dusk, the sun is just barely coming up and you have the silhouette of the truck and then the other truck shows up in silhouette. And I mean, everything about this movie is impeccable.
Yeah. And the Coen brothers are always good at that, but I feel like this is their best as far as like going for that noir feel. Like Hail Caesar and movies like that aren't going for that feel. Like Fargo is having a little bit of fun with it, but this is one of the first where it was just entirely just steeped in that.
Well, the interesting thing about this movie, too, is that it's not based on a script that they wrote. Like, I guess they wrote technically the screenplay, but this movie is essentially adapted directly from the books. The dialogue is pulled directly from the books. They didn't do very many changes to this. So this isn't one of their stories. This is a story that they saw, and they're like, we have to do that. And I think that sets it apart because a lot of their other movies are written by them and have a very different kind of feel, sort of like an undertone of a sense of humor. They have this sort of nihilistic bent where, to the point where I talked about what the movie means, and there's a sort of a pull to believe that it doesn't mean anything, and that's sort of their joke on you, that like all of this stuff that seems to have purpose and meaning kind of doesn't in the end, just like life.
Well, their focus on like the coins and everything is trying to show that it's all chance.
That's definitely an element of it. Yes, that's part of it. But I think watching this a second time, my take on what the movie was saying was about how that these guys, especially the sheriff character, right? The sheriff character spends a lot of his time talking about how the world has changed, right? How it's a different world, how that people...
It's even reflected directly in the title.
Right. And yet, I think in a sense, these aren't young people that are causing these problems. They aren't green-haired punks with bones in their noses like the other sheriff talks about. These are men of principle that are running amok. They're men who have strong beliefs about something. Anton Chigurh, despite the fact that he's horrifying, is clearly a man who believes in something, who has lines in the sands that he draws. That's why he goes to kill Llewellyn Moss's wife at the end, because he's saying, listen, you're right, I don't have to kill you, but I said that I would, so I'm gonna.
Yeah.
And it's about how, to me anyway, watching this movie this time, it was about how the world isn't screwed up because of the new people who don't believe in anything and who are crazy. It's sort of a result of the cumulative efforts of the people, the generation that came before.
Yeah, the hardline beliefs that are so set in these people that they're unwilling to change them.
Right, and there's several references to Vietnam in this and kind of how that is sort of hanging over these people. And the Llewellyn Moss is a guy who went off to fight in Vietnam, which, again, puts him in sort of the establishment camp there, where he's, he went off to do the thing that, sort of all these crazy unprincipled kids were protesting against. And yet he comes back kind of, I don't want to say sociopathic, but he definitely has shades of Chigurh in him. I think that one of the fascinating things about this movie is that all of these men kind of echo each other in weird ways. You have visuals that repeat with Chigurh and with the sheriff, and how that it's sort of implying that there's just different levels of how that kind of principle can express itself.
Yeah, you talk about, or the sheriff talks about, how would he know what this guy's seeing whenever he's like sitting in the exact same spot and trying to figure it out, and he's slowly putting together, and he's still able to get into the mindset even though he thinks that this guy's a complete monster. Which, speaking of which, Chigurh is one of the most menacing characters I've ever seen put on film. Like, it's just some weird way in the way that Javier Bardem played him.
Not Javier Bardem.
Was it Bardem?
No, okay, I'm thinking of Botet. You're right, Javier Bardem. I'm sorry.
Yes. No,
you were right. I was wrong.
It's all good. But just the way he played that, it's one of my favorite characters that's ever been put on film. And just every moment that he's on there is just like tension. And you just never know if he's going to end up like taking out a civilian for absolutely no reason other than they bothered him a little bit, or if he's going to like get into these crazy gunfights where he almost just seems unstoppable.
He doesn't seem completely unstoppable, though. That's the thing. I think the thing that makes him unstoppable is that he doesn't follow other people's rules. He's following his own rules very, very closely. He doesn't do what's expected. He's not living within the norms of society. And the fact that he's just willing to walk up to you and kill you without any without a compunction, compunction is the word I think I want to say, without any sort of hesitancy is what makes him so horrifying. And there's so many times where they won't even show the kill. They'll just cut to him talking to somebody and then cut around and be like, oh, and now he's got that guy's truck and he's washing the chicken feathers out. And you think, did he convince that guy to unload all of those chickens off of that truck before he killed him? Did he kill him first? They don't show that. You just like are left with this horrifying sort of image. And they play that out. The way they do that so well too is that they'll show like a really long scene of Chigurh interacting with somebody, like at the
peanut scene.
Well, the where he has the coin, where he flips the coin and says, "Call it."
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of.
That's like he's just sitting there eating peanuts, talking to this guy who owns a gas station, and it probably lasts like good 5 to 10 minutes, somewhere in that range, of him just having a conversation where he's super intense talking to this guy who has no idea what to say.
Well, right, and the guy's like, what is... Like, he's just taken aback by this conversation. He doesn't understand what kind of a conversation he's, wandered into. He's just making small talk and says, oh, hey, by the way, you up from, you get any rain your way? And that's kind of what draws Chigurh's attention to him in the first place, is like, oh, great, this guy knows, like, has seen me. He's a witness. I might have to do something about that. But he gets into it, and what's most fascinating to me about that conversation is that Chigurh gets real upset about the idea that this guy married into his like little podunk gas station business. He
chokes on himself for a second. He's like, you married into this?
Right, and it's such a weird little like, dude, what, like, why are you... But again, it's Chigurh having these like his own weird set of principles and not being able to let that go. And this guy's just like, well, kinda, yeah, I guess you could put it that way. He's like, no, you don't put it that way. It is that way. Oh, he's so great.
He's definitely a man that's black and white on everything.
This is something that I read, and I did not fact check it exactly. Like, I didn't go through every scene because I read it. I watched about half the movie one day and half the movie the next day, and I read it kind of in between. But there was a fact that I read that said there are the main three characters, Chigurh, Llewellyn Moss, and the sheriff, don't ever appear on screen at the same time together. Which I didn't realize, because you do see Llewellyn Moss in scenes with Chigurh, and apparently there's like one shot that kind of like in the hotel where Chigurh is chasing Moss, but every other time the shots are of these men all individually. And this particular movie reviewer who pointed this out said that he thought that symbolized something I kind of mentioned earlier, that these were all different aspects of the same person. Not literally, not saying that like there's some kind of weird split personality going on here, but that all of these men had something in common, that they were all sort of different fragments of a greater prototype.
The only problem I have with that is that Tommy Lee Jones doesn't quite fall into that category. Like, he's almost completely passive in this movie for the things he's able to accomplish.
Yes, but I think he's on that continuum. I think that you have, Chigurh on one end, and then Moss in the middle, who's sort of, he's kind of lawful, but he's sort of also willing to kill and do his own thing and, think outside the box that way. And then on the far end, you have Tommy Lee Jones. But they're all living by that sort of principle that is guiding them to, Chigurh has that great line where he's talking to Woody Harrelson's character, and he says, if the rule that you brought you here, what good was the rule? And if there is a guiding principle of this movie, I think that's it. I think it's asking if the principles that you live by bring you to a place that, doesn't line up with those principles, then what good were they to begin with? What is the point of having principles when, it might not lead you anywhere good? Those are really smart words, Tony. I love the way I put that sentence together. Wasn't that amazing?
I mean, I'm just here flabbergasted.
I know.
I don't even know
my
how to
gas is
respond.
flabbered as well. Wow. But I hope that I got the idea across at least. I'm sorry that was not the most eloquent.
I think it actually sounded a lot more eloquent than you think it did. It's just one of those things where it's a really hard movie to describe and to kind of understand. I'm sure that there are going to be people who tweeted us after this review comes out telling us their interpretation. And I fully welcome that because this is a movie I'd like to understand more. I am a fan of Cormac McCarthy, but I don't always understand what's going on. Like with The Road, it was probably the most crystal clear about what was happening. But Blood Meridian, I could barely tell you what that was about other than the judge is one of the weirdest and most interesting characters I've ever read. I have not read No Country for Old Men yet.
I picked it up and like it opened exactly the same way as the movie, and I had sort of like all right, this is gonna be one of those things where I'm gonna read the book and be thinking about the movie the whole time, and the movie was amazing, so I'm just gonna leave it. And I realized that might not be the greatest attitude to have, but man, there is something great about when a movie does get it right, when a movie does really well and paints a great picture, because there's something about the visuals and about having actors on the screen that can do something in the right instance that a book can't do.
Yeah.
And I love books, don't get me wrong. And many times that you'll have a book that, you know, it transcends the movie and the movie doesn't get it right, or the movie's not as good as the book. But I kind of feel the same way about Fight Club, even though I'm sort of ambivalent. Like, I just could not get through that book.
I liked Edward Norton's character a lot better than the same character in the book. Like, there were a lot of things that I liked better about the movie. There was some really cool stuff in the book, but it was one of the better adaptations I've ever seen. Speaking of that opening scene, do you feel like that's what they were trying to go for with the opening of Batman v Superman? Just something like really dark and cool sounding like that? Something really introspective, and it just flopped?
Okay, so we're talking about the the first words that Batman has in Batman v Superman, where he talks about the diamond hard truths and things that fall are fallen and all that nonsense.
Yeah, like, do you think that was kind of the angle they were going at, and they just don't have the talent that Cormac McCarthy does?
So, and you're comparing that to the first, like, the opening lines of this movie? Because
yeah. Oh, I'm just saying, like, it's a very introspective moment. Like, they're trying to set the tone for the movie. And it just didn't work nearly as well as having Tommy Lee Jones do it.
But I think that Tommy Lee Jones is actually saying something in his intro. What are the first words? Because the first things that I remember, maybe I'm misremembering this, but he starts talking about just how that the world is messed up and, you know, he had to put this kid away and he doesn't understand, you know, how things have come so undone. And he's just talking about his place in the world and trying to find it as the world changes around him. And that's the theme of the movie. If again, arguing if there is a theme, but for Tommy Lee Jones's character, at least, he is searching for a way to figure out what the world means and how he fits in it. And so to me, that was just signaling, especially now that I've seen it already, it wasn't just like, here's some cool stuff I'm saying. It was, here's how I feel, and here's what my character is going to be about in this movie. And it actually gave you facts. It wasn't like something that sounded deep and weird. It was like actual. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like I can't correlate those two at all.
I'm just saying, I feel like that's what they were trying to, like, what they were attempting to do. They were trying to show Batman's role in the world. Like, they were trying to show his beliefs and everything, and it just didn't work out nearly as well as it did here.
Okay. I did want to point out one of the first things Tommy Lee Jones mentions is that there was a federal judge that had been shot. And he talks about that as sort of a placeholder for where they are in time and stuff that had happened. And I read, I had to like read it 3 times on Wikipedia because I did not believe that it was true. But apparently, so the reference that he's making is to an actual event that happened in 1979 where a federal judge was shot. And that person who shot that judge, Woody Harrelson's father.
Really?
IRL. Yes.
That's kind of nuts.
I know, right? Like, his dad was for real a straight up gangster. That just blows my mind.
1 second. I thought you were saying that Woody Harrelson's dad was the judge, not the one who shot the judge.
No. His dad was the one who shot the judge.
I guess he really did fit into this movie then.
He really does. I do love his character too, because he's out of place here. He's trying to do that kind of he's trying to be tough and stuff. And when he gets up with Anton Chigurh, you're like, he is not ready to die. You can see him being terrified of this guy. And despite the fact he didn't have a lot of scenes, that was really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, he had probably 5 scenes, but all of them felt pretty important.
Yeah, and there's that, again, talking about stuff this movie sort of hints at. He mentions there's a floor missing, which to me I thought was a reference to like the 13th floor, and he's sort of making reference to superstition and how that, people have weirdness going on. But then I read that in the novel, it's actually the 17th floor, and that is where the gangs package their heroin or cocaine or whatever it is that are in those bags, that he's sort of mentioning, like, by the way, I know your secret. I know where you guys are doing your stuff. And it's just sort of one of those throwaway lines that comes in and leaves and kind of leaves you wondering, okay, well, what was that about? What are they trying to say there? Because you don't put that in this movie without it meaning something, but they don't tell you what it means. Ah.
That actually, I was talking about that last night with the people I was watching with, and it was like, yeah, that always happens with the 13th floor. It's really weird, especially in like casinos and stuff. I didn't realize that there was actually more to it than that.
Well, and again, they just
very observant.
Right, they just throw that away. They're like, hey, here it is, by the way. Yep. And they don't explain it. I mean, I don't want them to sit down and like have the directors come on screen and be, all right, guys, now this is what this means. Although that would be like, I could see the Coen brothers doing something like that, like just cutting to them in their office. Like, just so you guys understand, this is what we're saying. Like a weird Quentin Tarantino fourth wall breaking move.
I feel like this would be a very good movie to have the director commentary on for. I have not watched it that way though.
Do you think, is there director's commentary on this? I have the DVD, but I watched it on Netflix.
I'm not sure. I really hope there is. That sounds like it would be pretty interesting.
Quentin Tarantino, it bugs me. He never does commentaries on his movies. Like, he's like, I made the movie, you watch it and you decide. And I don't know for sure that whether or not the Coen brothers do or not, and a lot of times, even when I watch the commentary, the directors don't say the things that I want to hear. They're just like, oh yeah, well, this scene, this guy had major problems with his hairstyle. It was a lot of windy. I'm like, what does it all mean? I don't care about his hair. I mean, I care a little bit. It's cool to hear, but
it's like, we're all distracted because the caterer gave us food poisoning.
There is an interesting anecdote about that. They had to spend a ton of money on fake blood in this movie because they had to buy fake blood that wasn't made with Caro syrup like it normally is.
Yeah.
Because they had all those guys laying out in the desert, and if they used the Caro syrup fake blood, they would have been covered in ants. It's like a huge portion of their budget went to buying the fake blood that didn't have syrup in it.
It's like, yeah, just stay there precisely still while you get eaten alive by ants.
It's just, I don't know what else to say exactly. There's so many other things to talk about. There's so many other little moments. You talked about the chaos, the role that chaos plays in this, and the randomness and chance. And that is definitely an angle that sort of Anton's principles require him to pay homage to randomness and chaos. That his sort of religion, if you will, is worshiping at this altar of, flip the coin and see what happens. And, arguably that if you interpret it that way, the film is saying that life is chaos and there's no way to sort of avoid it. So if you like, the only thing to do is embrace it. And from that perspective, Anton Chigurh is the hero because he survives at the end, whereas Llewellyn Moss is trying to plan everything out.
And at the same time, because he's so principled, he's kind of bringing his own form of stability to the chaos.
That's true as well. In fact, that's another thing that I read somebody else talking about, that he is ultimately defeated by Llewellyn's wife, whose name I've forgotten, and I'm sorry. But in that final scene, she refuses to play by his rules and calls him out and says, no, the coin doesn't have anything to do with it. You either pull the trigger or you don't. I'm not going to play your game.
I think her name was like Carol Jane or something like that.
It was definitely one of those 2-word Southern type names, which, by the way, that lady was, I think, Australian. And it's really bizarre to see every time I see an actor who has a different accent. like play an like American, and not just an American, but like a Southern, like trailer park American. And then you hear them in like the special features or whatever talking, and they're from Australia. And I'm not going to try to do an Australian accent, but it just weirds me out for a minute.
That Australian accent is so much more subtle than Americans always try to replicate it as.
Yeah, but it's real noticeable. It ain't what she's doing in this movie. It isn't even like an American accent. It's like, oh, you were acting. Oh, geez, okay. I'm shocked. I mean, you shouldn't be, but that's actually, kind of the magic of movies is that you believe what you're seeing. Even if I look at Tommy Lee Jones and I know that's Tommy Lee Jones, like when he does a really good job like this, or Josh Brolin, and bring themselves to the character, you believe that they are that character in that moment. And so this is definitely a movie that does that really well.
Tommy Lee Jones is definitely like a dead set, like Texan sheriff, like in this movie. Like he pulls that off perfectly.
Well, yeah. And he's definitely doing he's not doing an accent or anything real bad. He basically sounds like Tommy Lee Jones, but still,
he draws out a few things a little bit differently, but it's not super thick.
Yeah, it's real good. Everything about this movie is real good. It lost the Oscar to who did it lose it to?
It was 2007. I'm trying to remember what it won 4 Oscars, but it didn't win Best Picture.
Man.
One of the things that I've always thought about with this movie also is the score, or the complete lack of one. There's like 2 moments where there's a slight musical flourish. And I don't know why, but I've always really liked that about this movie, that it let the tension build on its own. It didn't force you into having tension because the music is rising or anything like that.
Oh, it did win. I'm sorry. Best Picture. Oh, it was going up against There Will Be Blood, which, interestingly enough, they were doing a pyrotechnics test for the burning oil well scene in that. And that shut down No Country for Old Men for like a day or two because the giant plume of smoke was showing up in all their shots.
It seems like it could almost have worked with the aesthetic of this movie, but...
Well, like just having a burning oil well just randomly in the background?
Just like somewhere off in the background, just smoke rising.
Excuse me, Mr. Paul Thomas Anderson, would you mind just keep continuing to burn that while we try to shoot this scene? That would be great.
It's like, we didn't intend to have it, but now that it's there, I like it.
You can use all of our 80s pickup trucks in your 1880s period piece if you want.
I think the 1980s would be a little bit easier to replicate than a lot of decades. Some of that tech's still around. You can still find some of the cars without having to search really, really hard for it.
That's true, except for if you want to have a new, like, you can't have an old rust bucket car from 1980. It's got to look like a real car.
That's true.
Would have been around there.
There's a lot of cars that are preserved from the 70s that are just like decent cars because it was a good era for them.
Well, the great thing about
those on tape.
Hollywood definitely does, there are whole companies that are, devoted to, all right, well, you want your period picture? Here's some cars to rent out. So they have that. But you look at this movie and there's a lot of car destruction, glass getting shot out and things, sort of popping. And there was that crash at the end. All of those things, every time I saw that, I was like, man, I wonder, like, how, just from a logistical standpoint, I wonder how that works.
It's like, we need to find every 1980s pickup truck in Texas so we could wreck it.
Right. Do they actually like put bullet holes in them? Do they have to repair the bullet holes? How does that work? Was that a special effect? Do they have those little bullet hole stickers like you sometimes see?
They looked like they were legit bullet holes, but that...
Yeah, they did. I'm being a little facetious there, but I do wonder, like, okay, like there are only so many 1980s cars, and these people are going to want to use them on some other set. So every single one you put holes in or wreck or whatever, that's going to be an extra expense.
Yeah. I'd rather imagine that a guy like Danny McBride from Tropic Thunder just was out there in the desert screaming and shooting a bunch of trucks and having a good time. Although it is a little bit harder, like if you don't have an automatic weapon, to put those sorts of trails into the guns and everything with everything perfectly spaced in the angles. It's all doable with like
Tony knows all about this. He's seen some cars shot up by automatic weapons.
I've seen a lot of pictures of cars shot up by automatic weapons.
Well, so I'm sure so did the special effects department, Tony.
I'm just saying, it looks good. Pretty sure every effect in this movie is done in camera too. I don't think there's any CGI anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to. If there is, it's not at all noticeable.
It also took about 25 million to make, made about 175 million domestically in theater, so it was definitely a success, more than just the 4 Oscars on top of it. I don't know. This is one of my favorite movies, but I remember leaving the theater pissed off because I didn't understand the ending at all. I didn't understand the themes, and I was just like, that was stupid. Like, and then it just grew on me so quickly. Like, even on the drive home.
I think in your mind you kind of remember it ending with Chigurh getting away, but it actually ends just with Tommy Lee Jones talking about that dream with his dad and the torch going on ahead, and that's kind of like a really beautiful moment. But on the other hand, it doesn't feel like the moment that you end the movie on.
It doesn't feel like closure.
So it's a weird. It's interesting.
And you had seen this movie before, or had you not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I own the DVD.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I'm a big fan of it, although I hadn't revisited it recently. And watching it again just kind of blew my hair back again. I sort of had forgotten. You remember the highlights. You remember Anton Chigurh and the gas canister and some of the like cool things with him pulling the briefcase around in the air vents. But watching it again and just seeing the performances and seeing the cinematography and having it all play out, there are so many little moments that just are really, really beautiful and work so well, and yet are and also kind of horrifying.
You even get like satisfying moments of symmetry between like the oxygen tank and like the silencer on the shotgun, just like with his feet walking down the hallway. Just such a pretty movie for such dark content.
I don't know if I have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, we've been going for about 33 minutes on this movie, which is about 10 minutes longer than we usually do for a review. So I think it's about time to put this one to bed for that.
Speaking of movies with gorgeous cinematography, we do have to talk about the new trailer that dropped for The Arrival from Denis Villeneuve. I'm sure I mispronounced that, but the director of Prisoners, director of Sicario, director of Enemy, which, man, was that a weird movie. Have you seen Enemy, Tony?
I don't think I have.
It's weird. It's real weird. Sicario, at least, you talk about Sicario. I would just... Sicario is kind of like No Country in that it's got the sort of anti-hero, like, people that you don't really like, and Josh Brolin's in it, too. But they're, you can still kind of cheer for him and get behind him, but there was something about Sicario was like even more dark than No Country for Old Men was for me.
That's specifically in the end. Like, we won't get into what happens at the end of that one, but like that was even dark for me. I was like, whoa.
I know that was the point. I know that was the point of the movie, but like I can't tell people like, yeah, you should go see Sicario. It's the best. I have to tell people like, yeah, Sicario, it's real pretty. Yeah. Oh boy, though. Did you get depressed by the end?
Emily was really good in that one, though.
Oh, she was, yes. And again, the cinematography is great. But Denis Villeneuve is directing this new movie, The Arrival.
I think it's just called Arrival because there's a 1996 Charlie Sheen movie called The Arrival, which I liked it whenever I was a kid, but I couldn't tell you anything about that movie. I know it was an alien movie, but that's about it.
And it is about these giant egg-shaped ships that come to Earth, and apparently we have Amy Adams playing this sort of linguistics experts trying to communicate with them. And it's all about, sort of language and how language works in our brains and what communication means. This new trailer, did you feel like this new trailer showed too much? Because it definitely showed more action.
Yeah, I was a little bothered by that because I was sold on it from just the 1 minute teaser that I'd seen before, where they're going into the ship and it's right before the moment of contact, and you actually get to see some contact with the aliens and you start seeing them piece together the language. You see that there's going to be conflict where some countries just want to try to kill the aliens and get rid of them. Like they showed a lot for that trailer. And I know that they're trying to get people into the theater by doing that, but I think that if you take the more subtle approach, you might have gotten more people for this one. Still looks very good. It's still one I want to see day one, though. I
liked, and I'm obviously sort of more pro spoiler than you, so this is maybe a difference of taste. But I like that they went a little bit more into the idea that this is about language. They talk about it kind of in the first trailer. They say, sort of language is the first weapon of, a conflict. I think that's the phrase that they use. I don't know exactly how they described it, but she goes more into, how does use of language affect your mind? If you start to think in another language, does that change the way that, your consciousness works? Do you think about different things if you're thinking in a different language and the way it's structured? And that, even though I knew that was already the premise because I read up on it a little bit, that idea really excites me. And I'm glad they sort of pushed it more in the second trailer than just sort of like, you're going to translate for us. And what happens next? It tells you that it's a little bit more of a psychological movie, that it's a thinking movie rather than just here's some aliens, what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't look like it's going to turn into Independence Day or anything like that. It looks like it's going to be a little more cerebral.
Right. Well, we do see the people, shooting at the shells, they call them, the big eggs, and you do see more of the eggs coming to Earth. But I didn't feel like I was seeing the end of the movie there. It didn't feel like, and then it's going to end in this giant showdown, and the aliens and the people, and we're going to win, and the president's going to give a big speech. Like, it felt like that would happen, but it would be all sort of more to the larger purpose of trying to figure out what these things are and what it means, and this, kind of a bigger metaphorical message about us living on Earth and the failure to communicate with each other and being able to think like our enemies.
Kind of like the day the Earth stood still type thing.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I actually really do get that same kind of vibe where it's not like the day the Earth stood still was very much from the perspective of the aliens, right? Like they show up and they basically say, hey, listen, calm down, guys. We're not going to, we're not here to hurt you. We're just here to talk and kind of try for peace at every opportunity and just get shut down every which way. But that's I
think that also depends on the version, if you're talking about the old school one or the Keanu Reeves version.
I'm talking about the old school one. I saw the Keanu Reeves one, but I didn't love the old school one. I mean, there's definitely a lot of cheesy special effects and kind of, it's not, I'm sure it has its, definitely for good reason, has its place in the annals of modern, sci-fi history, but the Keanu Reeves one is just, I forgot what happened in the Keanu Reeves version. And that to me is not the mark of a good movie if you don't remember it after you've seen it.
Oh, I mean, if you're going to have Keanu Reeves play something, having him play an alien that doesn't have any emotion is probably a good thing.
I don't think it was Keanu Reeves' fault. It just wasn't a great movie.
Yeah, it wasn't his fault. Like, I remember Kathy Bates being in it as the Secretary of Defense or something like that. It was a little weird.
But the original has that sort of idea about, war and how we are sort of wired for conflict. And I think they're probably going to touch on some of those themes here. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I thought it was a beautiful trailer, though. We've been talking a lot about cinematography this show, but there was really some great shots, and Villeneuve knows how to paint a frame.
Yeah, and I always love those trippy moments where people are walking on the wrong plane and things like that. So just seeing them go 0G, then all of a sudden finding themselves walking upright in the ship and all that stuff is just fun to me.
I did love that little moment too, where she they go 0G and she's like, nope. And Jeremy Renner kind of grabs her hand and says, no, we're going up. We gotta just hang on. It was, I thought it was still a good trailer. I didn't think it showed too much. It showed me more of okay, I for sure know I want to see this movie now.
It didn't ruin it for me. I was sold from the first trailer. Now it's we'll probably make a 0.5 out of it.
I hope so. It's coming up. A lot of good movies coming up in November, December time. I say good. I mean, how do I know? A lot of movies that I'm interested in coming up November, December time, more than just this is some weird Oscar bait thing. For real, they look good, but they're, I mean, we have Rogue One coming up. There's a new trailer for that as well, which
that trailer looked really good.
There's that eclipse shot. I mean, I really enjoyed the trailers for Star Wars Episode 7, and I did not love that movie. And there have been quite a few movies that came out with great trailers lately that haven't turned out to be good movies. So there's no guarantee that Rogue One is going to be good or great. But the dag nabbit do those trailers have me excited.
Well, it looks like Gareth Edwards kind of nailed it, at least from how it looks. We'll see if he got the story right.
I do love Godzilla. I know a lot of people hate on Godzilla, but I enjoyed Godzilla a lot in the theater. So hopefully it'll at least be enjoyable.
The blind Jedi guy and all that looks like he's going to be awesome. I like Forrest Whitaker, speaking of which, he's in Arrival as well. Rogue One.
That new Rogue One trailer has that blind guy who's not a Jedi, but definitely knows the Force, saying all is as the Force wills it. And that kind of brings you into an interesting sort of new era of understanding what the Force is, because if he talks a lot about the Force and we get sort of this other perspective of the Force as potentially an active thing with, you know, a motivation and a drive and a will, that's going to be sort of a whole new monkey wrench in the way that the Force is understood in the Star Wars universe. Qui-Gon in the prequels says something about the living will of the will of the living Force. And that's just kind of a throwaway line. We don't know anything more about that, but if we get more into the religion side of maybe people will actually worship the Force, that could be a really cool. And maybe it's one of those things where the Force is a thing, right? Like we can quantifiably understand that, yes, it exists in this universe, but we can't say for sure if it is like a person, if it has will or not. And there's all these theological debates, because I would love to see that happen, where you can't say for sure one way or the other. There are people who'll be like firmly believe that like this is like a god, the Force is, you know, and I worship it or whatever. And then other people just like this is just a tool.
Like, I'm sure a lot of people would start seeing parallels. Like, would it be like the Holy Spirit or something like that? Like, where it's kind of the active portion of a godhead.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's obviously a parallel that you could draw. I'm just excited for more exploration of that idea, because we didn't really get any of that in The Force Awakens. It was just sort of like, yep, here it is. The Force gave, you know, Daisy Ridley some superpowers. She wins. Okay. They don't talk about it at all, other than, you know, Han Solo to say that's not how the Force works. Like, nobody ever says how the Force does work in that movie. And I'm hoping that episode 8 also gets into that a lot, because we're going to have Luke on the screen then, and he's going to be talking about here's what the Force does. Here's, hopefully, fingers crossed, Rian Johnson gets some of that in there, because that
seems
what I'd
like
like
something
to see.
Rian Johnson would explore. I don't know if Gareth Edwards will, but it seems like that character is poised to do so, or at least bring some new ideas to it. I also really like the look of that new droid that's like, he says you're a friend, I will not kill you.
I am hoping that we definitely need a different type of good guy droid. You know, we've had C-3PO and R2-D2 through the whole Star Wars story. You know, BB-8 is, you know, the cute little fuzzy ball. I really am looking forward to this giant hulking killer thing that has a little bit of Tars in him from Interstellar. You know,
because that thing's like about at least 7 feet tall too. It is not a small killer robot.
Right, and he doesn't have that. He doesn't have any whimsy or sense of humor, except for the fact that he doesn't have a sense of humor. So you just have to deal with him like, I will not kill you. You are a friend. I really hope that I was very nervous when he did the odds thing, like the odds of us surviving are this. I was like,
or the odds of success are less than 3%.
Yeah, are we doing that reference? And they kind of subverted a little bit, but that felt a little bit fanficky to me.
Yeah, a little bit. But if there's anything that Star Wars fans want, it's references to the old movies, or at least that's what they think we want.
To shift the subject completely, I did want to mention yesterday, when we're recording this, was my child AJ's, my 4-year-old's first day of real school.
Yeah, I saw you tweet out a picture of that. Like, is this like kindergarten or preschool?
It's like pre-K. You know, his but he's going to the school building the same, you know, where he would go for kindergarten. He's getting a little bit of early learning type stuff going on. Was so pumped. He got to ride the bus. We took him to school in the first morning and dropped him off. And that was, man, I was not like thinking about it much ahead of time. I was like, all right, yeah, this is cool. And then like we left him with his teacher and walked away, and he was just there, like, he waved by at us, and then he was talking to the other kids, and he had his Pokemon Go backpack on. I was like, what? No, I'm not gonna cry. What?
You're like, this is what women do.
Yeah. And my wife asked me, "Is like, are you kind of sad?" And I was like, "Yeah, a little bit." She's like, "Good, I am too." I didn't break down or like start weeping or anything, but I got more emotional than I was expecting.
I was wondering if Ashley would, because she sounds like she's a little bit more stoic than you.
No, she gets emotional. She doesn't react to movies like I do. She just sort of says like, "Well, it's a movie," and like kind of is disconnected. So like horror movies don't scare her, and like cringe
like
things don't.
Her and I are kind of
her.
like that. Although cringe stuff bothers me immensely. Like cringe hurts me.
I think if we get to watch any chick flicks for like Viewers Choice Month that coming up, that like if she watches it with me, she'll get kind of weepy when weepy stuff happens. So she's emotional on that level.
It's right to the ovaries.
Yeah. But she doesn't like it's other than that, she doesn't really care one way or the other, which is fine. Speaking of Viewers Choice Month, the nominations have closed and voting has begun.
There's definitely some stuff in there that would be painful for us, but I think people were taking a little bit of mercy on us this time. There's some good movies on that list.
There are. I'm actually going to, right now on the podcast, I'm going to vote for what I would like to see, Tony.
Partially because we can't see the results without
I can't
voting.
see the results if I don't vote. But also because, I get to cast a vote, right? It doesn't matter. So I'm going to start off with one that my wife nominated, Anne of Green Gables, the sequel, which, by the way, when I was growing up was called Anne of Avonlea. All right. But then they had to bring out Anne of Green Gables, the continuing story. So they retitled that stinking thing. It's, in my mind, it's still called Anne of Avonlea, Tony. Just so you know.
I never saw either version.
Well, they're the same version. They just have different names because they're dumb. It's a good movie, though. Next, I'm going to go with The Godfather because I've never seen it and I need to see it. Need to see it bad. I'm going to go with Napoleon Dynamite because I love Napoleon Dynamite. I don't know what Santa with Muscles is. I'll leave that one.
That's a Hulk Hogan Christmas movie.
I think I'm going to go with Under the Skin.
I voted for that Christmas one.
Oh, yeah? Okay, that's
just
cool.
Just because I was like, I'm too curious now.
And we have one more. There are actually 5. You can cast 5 votes because there are 5 weeks. I think I will go with Sunshine.
That eats.
No. I'm voting for ones I actually want to see. So to recap, Anne of Avonlea, known by the other dumb title, The Godfather, Napoleon Dynamite, Sunshine, and Under the Skin are the ones that I am going to vote for. And I'm going to see what's at the top, Tony.
Currently at the top is Evil Dead 2, which kind of surprised me. Maybe people just want us to see that since they know that you weren't like the biggest fan of Evil Dead.
Yeah, why can't it be Evil Dead 1? Evil Dead 1 is a great movie.
We could just watch both.
Evil Dead and then like The Evil Dead I really liked. Okay, go ahead.
Then Shadow of the Vampire, which is one that David Webb has been asking us to do for a while, and if he gets on here, or if we get that one, we're supposed to get him on here for that. Okay. And if you guys haven't listened to the Steely-Eyed Wordsmith and you like writing, you really need to check that out. That's one of the funnest podcasts that I've heard in a long time. David is just doing it with his clone, and it's very informative. A lot of good stuff on there. Recently, he interviewed Joseph Devon of Human Echoes and the Writers Arena. You guys know him. So check that out. Like Steely-Eyed Wordsmith. You got to subscribe to the Comic Noobs podcast to get those. Following that is Troll 2, which is notoriously one of the worst movies ever made. It's like Birdemic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, actually.
Then Odd Thomas, which is a Anton
Yelchin surprising
movie.
For it to be that high. Like I've heard people say like, hey, that wasn't that bad.
It really wasn't. It's
my
very
friend Brantley really likes that movie.
It's really expensive for a direct-to-DVD movie. It should have gotten a theatrical release for how good it was. Then you've got Dangerous Liaisons, which I don't know anything about, but supposedly it's a really good movie.
That's at number 5. And then underneath that, we have The Perfect Host, Wetlands, Scanners, Altered State, and Mulholland Drive. And none of the ones I voted for... Oh, I'm sorry, Napoleon Dynamite has 2 votes. Everything else, Sunshine, I'm the only vote. Anne of Green Gables, I'm the only vote.
I definitely want
Godfather.
to talk about Sunshine at some point. We also don't know what we're doing for our October month. It's usually like horror movies. I was thinking this October, instead of doing the Universal ones, we'd go to the Hammer horror stuff, but we'll see.
There's some good stuff in Hammer. There's some real good stuff in Hammer, but that's coming up later. You guys get your vote in. Vote for the ones you want us to see. Either you can torture us with the bad movies, or you can vote for the good ones and say, I really want Al and Tony to talk about that.
My personal preference is a little bit of both.
Yeah, I like that we usually mix it up, that nobody is just completely trying to tear us down, but they do like to hear us.
Well, we do have
who nominated Bernie? What was that? The Jack Black vehicle, Bernie?
I think that was Kevin Veldman, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go with the old thread and look.
I shouldn't talk too loud about it, because then they're like, oh, Delbert doesn't want to see Bernie. It's not even like it just seems like so out of place here. Maybe it's really good, Tony. Maybe it's amazing.
We're gonna be watching the Drag Ticket also get some attention soon, I'm sure, once Jen gets back on here, because she put on like Tu Wong Fu, like just all sorts of other stuff. Like there's at least 5 movies that involve drag on this list. Yeah, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. We had our big drag thing last year with 2 movies. Actually, was Hairspray last year, or was that the year before?
No, Hairspray was the year before.
All right, so Hairspray was the year before. Last year we had Rocky Horror, and that was definitely full of drag.
Well, Rocky Horror was about, like, Hairspray was just like had an actor in drag, so I don't know if that counts.
That's true.
Like, that wasn't a plot point. It didn't turn out that John Travolta is a man, but his character is not a man.
Yeah.
I don't know how you draw that line.
That's true. It wasn't a movie about drag, whereas Tu Wong Fu is literally about drag. You've got Patrick Swayze and who played Blade? Wesley Snipes and
yes, him.
People
Wesley
like that,
Snipes.
all in drag the whole time. It's just weird. I've never seen the movie. I've seen parts of it. Like I was at the gym the other day, and it was just on the TV, and I was like, I'm not going to watch that. I'm going to watch the Olympics.
Olympics is good, man. Except for all the movie trailers they play.
Except for Usain Bolt just crushing people. Damn it.
Okay. I just want to give my beef about the Olympics. There's no reason to put Olympic footage in your Star Wars teaser. That doesn't fit, okay? It doesn't fit in the Ben-Hur teaser. Maybe a little bit better because there's a race in there, but even so, no. Unless you have a movie about the Olympics, it doesn't need Olympic footage in there. You're just trying to get me to stop my DVR fast forward, and it's not going to work because I'm real smart on that DVR fast forward.
And if you do stop, it's only going to create negative feelings towards whatever they're advertising.
Yeah. Like most of those commercials, actually. There's not a lot of great commercials in the Olympics. Although I do like the one with the girl whose like family is visiting her at GE and her brother's a complete moron. That's good.
Yeah.
Did you build that robot over there? That's not a robot. That's my coworker, Steve. He helps me build things with his human hands.
Sounds like it's a problem for that, like, totally not robots subreddit.
Put Hillary Clinton in there. Oh, speaking of Reddit, did you see the thing I retweeted this morning about No Man's Sky?
Was that the, like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, just like how it was advertised is just beautiful Jurassic Park, and then the goofiest, like, half donkey, half blind T-Rex thing
with the person playing the same theme but like on the accordion and really badly.
I did see that. I didn't comment, but I was just giggling to myself for a good long while over that. And I've been having a pretty good time with No Man's Sky. It's not perfect. It's not $60, but it is, like, it does have some fun points to it. I think you were the one who told me to name like this goofy rhino T-Rex thing on a planet, Andre. So somewhere out there, someone might eventually find Andre just on a planet.
I gotta say, seeing all that weird character creation stuff makes me want to play the game more. In an odd way. All the
procedurally generated stuff?
Yeah, like that, despite the fact that I don't believe that T-Rex could balance, like that's kind of a problem for me. Other than that goofy character
it's lower gravity
looks really good. I mean, doesn't look good. You don't understand what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand how they could make all those pieces fit together in a way that basically works, like physically. And that is awesome.
Yeah, I've found some really cool looking creatures. Like a lot of these little ones. Like I found this like strange monkey snail thing. I found like so many different things out there. Like I think I'm gonna have to start tweeting it out. Like anytime I find a weird creature. It's one of the nicer things about the PlayStation 2 is it's just so easy to send out screenshots. I love that. I love streaming.
You've been doing some streams as well, right?
Yeah, my One Punch Gandhi is a lot of fun.
Well, you've been doing streams in No Man's Sky is why I brought it up. But yes, One Punch Gandhi is also fun. That's in Fallout 4.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of... I've been doing No Man's Sky. Usually it's a little bit later at night because it's a game that doesn't kind of like stimulate your brain like a first-person shooter would where you're kind of like more amped up. It's one that kind of settles you down. So like I like doing that between like 10 and midnight my time just to like chill and just spend some time in space.
I have a question about No Man's Sky.
All right.
This is something that I noticed after watching you play, and then I watched a stream. Is it weird that all of the text in that game is written in first person? Because it feels weird to me.
I haven't even noticed, really.
It'll say things like, I discover this, and I now know the name of this word here, or whatever, whereas like
Instead
90%...
of you discovered this?
Right. I don't know how to feel about that. It feels very off.
I didn't even notice it until you said it. Now I'll probably notice it every single time from here out. Like, I just didn't think about it because I've seen games that do that before. It's not the most common way of doing it, but it didn't really bother me until just now.
I've never seen it like with text-based stuff. I've seen you'll have a character. Sometimes, if you're playing Halo, you'll have Master Chief, and obviously he refers to himself. It's not you in that character. It's the Master Chief character. But when you start saying I as the pronoun there, it makes me feel like there's some specific person that you're playing that isn't you. But it doesn't, like No Man's Sky doesn't seem like you have a character exactly.
Yeah, you can't even see your arms. You can't see anything. Like you've never seen what your character looks like. That's one of the things that does bother me about it. Like it seems like the type of game that could really do with some character creation, but you never see the other players, even if you're on the same planet. So it's not really multiplayer in that sense. So you don't really need that, I suppose.
Well, the multiplayer aspect is that they do, like, they'll see the names of things. Like, somebody can discover Andre, the weird rhino, or, Bergville, the planet, or whatever. I think you named something after me, right?
Yeah, it was like Bergopolis or Bergville, something like that.
Yeah.
There's a planet Berg out there.
I'm a planet in No Man's Sky.
There's a few. If you do see me streaming and you come and say hi, I will straight up name a planet after you or some weird bug thing or anything like that. I've been having a lot of fun with that. There's so much to discover that we could never name everything. So, yeah.
Check it out on Twitch, by the way. Twitch.tv/Human Echoes is our channel. We do a lot of stuff over there. We have our Sims streams on Wednesdays. We have on Friday, I do Dwarf Fortress Adventure Mode, and I'm getting better at that. I actually started playing that kind of on my own. That game is crazy and fun.
That game is just insane. Like I was reading over the description that you guys did for this most recent one. Like Blastoise goes to Boothead or something.
Boot-teached is the name of our old fort. We discovered the fortress that we had built in the Dwarf Fortress mode in the days leading up to this version of Dwarf Fortress, and we sent an adventurer in there who was a tortoise man. A desert tortoise man, and he got himself demolished by the military of Boot-teached. But not before he got to bang some people in the head and stuff. It was great.
It definitely sounds more fun to me than the standard mode. Also, I think tonight we're doing Brawlhalla over on Twitch, as well as YouTube. We're trying to do it so that we can be on both channels a little bit more.
Anyway, I think that will about wrap it up for the podcast. As we mentioned at the very top of the hour, man, it would really help if more of y'all could become members, because that is what keeps the podcast moving. You get awesome stuff. You get access to the bonus podcast at the lowest $2 level. You work your way up to the tiers. There's more awesome stuff at the $20 tier. You get a free t-shirt. You're paying $20 a month for but you get a t-shirt. Tony, you describe it. I'm doing a bad job.
If you get the $2 level, you're getting postcards, you're getting some other cool stuff. If you go up to the $5 level, you're getting pins and really cool things that we send out every few months to our members. The reason why membership is so important is because ad revenue and all that is not a huge earner like it used to be in the early times of the internet, where you get like dollars per click or anything like that. Whenever you subscribe as a member, you're making up for thousands of clicks on our videos. You're making up for tons of shares, lots of other things. And for the low price of $2 a month, you end up getting the bonus podcast, which is our most fun product to make. It's not just clips from things we've cut out of other episodes. It is an entirely new product. Every
it's a
2
whole
weeks.
hour of me and you and Joe. I almost said me and you and Tony. You, the listener, are in the bonus podcast. You didn't even realize it. Me and Tony and Joe just sort of, we have a list of topics and we'll pick something like quantum immortality and talk about it for maybe 20 minutes and just riff and sort of dig into it. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things you can learn from it. It's just a great product, and you can get that for the low price of $2 a month. It comes out every 2 weeks.
And so thank you guys for considering becoming a member. If you can't become a member, there are other ways to support us. A review on iTunes is always a great way. And another awesome way is if you shop at Amazon, go to humanechoes.com and click that link on the side with our books on it, or any of the links in these descriptions that link to Amazon. It'll put a cookie in your browser. 24 hours, anything you buy, we get a nice little cut of. There have been a lot of people buying office supplies through there. We thank you for that. And we've had some pretty interesting stuff like bikes and generators and all sorts of things bought through there. We get 4 to 6%. It really helps us out. It doesn't cost you anything extra.
And next week, we will be covering a movie that we have talked about for almost as long as we've been doing the podcast. Next week, we're talking about Steven Spielberg's directorial feature debut, Duel.
This is one I haven't seen, actually.
I have, and it's good. It is good stuff. You'll be like, wow, that Steven Spielberg had it from the beginning. And we've been talking around it for all these years, Tony. It's time to talk about it.
We were waiting for it to hit Netflix, and we just got sick of it. And we're like, fine, we'll pay for the $2 to pay-per-view it. It's good stuff, though. You guys need to check it out. And we'll see you next week. Don't forget to vote in Viewers' Choice Month. Vote for your favorites, whatever you want us to talk about. We'll see you next week. It's pinned up there. Vote. Bye.